numbers have some very nice properties that let us do math with them relatively easily. And so we're going to go through just a quick review of some of those properties now. We think of the real numbers as having two operations, addition and multiplication. You might be thinking of some other operations, but addition and multiplication are the ones that we're really interested in. And these operations have some nice properties. Addition and multiplication are both commutative, which means that if we're adding any two numbers, we can switch the order. If we're multiplying any two numbers, we can switch the order. They're also both associative. If we're adding up three numbers, or we're multiplying out three numbers, we can group them however we like. We're going to use the associative property in a very specific way, which is to justify writing a plus b plus c or a times b times c without any parentheses. Right? The associative property means we can just add up these three numbers, and we don't need to include any grouping to say what order we want to do those additions in. We can just say multiply together three things, and we don't need to add anything to say what order we want to do that multiplication in. So addition and multiplication separately have these nice properties, commutative and associative. When we combine them out of the usual order, right, because ordinarily we do multiplication before we do addition. If we use parentheses to do addition before multiplication, we can use the distributive property to eliminate those parentheses. So if we have a number a times a sum b plus c, well, we can multiply a times the first number plus a times the second number. And this might go without saying because multiplication is commutative, but we'll also mention that we can distribute from the right. If we have a sum times some number a, that's the first number times a plus the second number times a. Okay, I mentioned you might be thinking of some more operations. You might be thinking of subtraction and division as if they were operations. But it turns out we don't really need those as separate properties because the real numbers also have the nice properties of identity and inverse. The additive identity property just says that there's a number that does what 0 does. Right? So there's a number that when we add it, it doesn't do anything. The multiplicative identity property says that there's a number that does what 1 does. There's a number that when we multiply it by it, it doesn't do anything. And once we have an identity, we can talk about the notion of an inverse. The additive inverse property means that every number has an opposite. Every number has an opposite, so we're gonna call it negative a. Right? That means the opposite of whatever real number a is. So that if we add a number with its opposite in either order, we get 0. The multiplicative inverse property means that everything except 0. 0 doesn't have a multiplicative inverse. But for everything except 0, we have a multiplicative inverse, which we'll write as 1 over a. So that if we multiply a by its inverse, we get the multiplicative identity. We get 1 back. And that's how we define subtraction and division. We define subtraction and division in terms of the inverses. So subtraction is really just addition in disguise. A minus b means a plus the opposite of b. Division is multiplication in disguise. A divided by b means a times the multiplicative inverse of b. right? So subtraction and division are just defined in terms of addition and multiplication. They're not new operations in their own right.